Although Druidry saw its re-emergence as a spiritual path nearly 3 centuries ago, it's still largely a misunderstood path. Modern misconceptions about Druidry persist to this day. One of these misconceptions is that since all known Druids died out centuries ago, there can be no Druids today. While it is true that many Druidic practices died out, it's probably also true that some of the practices of Druidry were absorbed into Christianity. For example, the custom of hanging mistletoe at Christmas. In either case, Druid reconstructionists painstakingly research historical and archaeological records to discover what the ancient Druids believed and practiced. This knowledge is then usually incorporated into the body and practice of modern Druidry. In the 18th century, largely because of a renewed interest in archaeology in the wake of the Enlightenment, a revival of Druidry began. This revival was inspired by the works of authors like John Aubrey, who lived from 1629 to 1697, John Toland, who lived from 1670 to 1722, William Stukeley, who lived from 1687 to 1765, and Edward Williams, who lived from 1747 to 1826. In particular, Edward Williams spearheaded the Druid revival in Wales and England. Williams is better known by his Druid name, Iolo Morganwg. He founded the Gorsedd, or the Gathering of Bards, which still goes on in Wales to this day. Morganwg is often criticized for his tendency to invent things outright, but no matter how imaginative some of his accounts of Druid practice might have actually been, he was instrumental in reviving Druidry as a spiritual path. His seminal work on the subject is called the Bardas. Although Druidry has been enjoying a revival for the past 3 centuries, there is no known straight-line descent from ancient to modern Druidry, just as there is no straight-line descent from ancient to modern times in religions like Christianity and Islam. This doesn't mean that Druidry is not a legitimate belief system for modern followers of the path. There are thousands of people today who call themselves Druids, and who practice variations of an earth-centered spirituality. Groups like the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids in Great Britain, and the Reformed Druids of North America in the United States, have members in the thousands, and many other Druids worldwide choose for various other reasons not to self-identify as Druids, and decide to remain anonymous and not join a group. There may be as many as 2 million or more Druids worldwide. There's probably as many types of Druidry as there are Druids. Some are polytheistic, some are pantheistic, and some are even agnostic or even atheist. Some believe that gods and goddesses exist as real, separate entities, and others see gods and goddesses as archetypal energies. For most of us, it's our belief as Druids that if the gods and goddesses are real, then they will guide us as we recreate Druidry. And if the gods and goddesses aren't real, and we're just making this up as we go along, then what was done in the past doesn't really matter anyway, as long as the rites, rituals, and beliefs have meaning for us today. I began the Druid path in the late 1970s. Back then there was no internet. Finding information on paganism was difficult, and finding information on Druids was nearly impossible. That didn't stop us from experimenting with Druidry and shamanism, though. We cobbled together a belief system piece by piece from what we learned from shamanic journeying and the inspiration of the Awen. In the early days, we were an insular group, having little contact with Druid groups outside of our own. As paganism and Druidry continued to grow and spread, we began to make contact with other groups to exchange information and to learn from each other. Much to our surprise, we soon discovered that much of what we created had also been replicated by these other groups. Although the knowledge of ancient ancestors may have been lost to us, it is my belief that it's still accessible to those who know how to part the mists and enter into the other world to learn at the feet of those who have gone before us. The fact that many different Druid groups, working independently of each other, have arrived at the same rites and practices seems to me to indicate that there's magic afoot as we recreate Druidry. For all the diehards who insist that what Reconstructionists and Revivalists practice isn't real Druidry, I would say to them, okay, tell me what else to call it and you can call it that instead. Ultimately, every spiritual path had a beginning and was new at one time. Most paths began on the ashes of former systems, and Druidry is no exception to this rule. Focusing too heavily on what our ancient ancestors might have practiced is missing the point. Any spiritual path that doesn't change and adapt with the times is stagnant and dead, or dying. The world is a much different place now than it was in the time of the ancients. And from this perspective, Druidry is merely changing and adapting to modern times. This is why the Black Mountain Druid Order includes information from revivalists like Yola Morganach and Robert Graves, author of The White Goddess, who actually created the Celtic tree calendar. While such information is not what our ancient ancestors practiced, it has proven useful in our modern Druidic practices, so we continue to use it. Some people prefer the label Neo-Druid for contemporary Druids because there's no straight-line lineage between ancient and modern Druidry. They use the Neo to differentiate between modern Druids and ancient Druids. Isaac Bonowitz, the founder of Ein Raiach Féin, or Our Own Druidry in Gaelic, broke this down even further into Paleo-Pagan, Mesopagan, and Neo-Pagan. Bonowitz used Paleo-Pagan to refer to the original pagan indigenous tribes of Europe. He used Mesopagan to refer to pagan-based systems inspired by the Enlightenment era, such as Theosophy, Rosicrucians, and the Druid Revival, and Neo-Paganism to indicate modern-day pagans. I don't use the term Neo myself. I refer to myself only as a Druid. I also refer to my fellow Druids as Druids without the Neo prefix. Our reason for this is simple. Druids learn from nature. The natural world is our holy book. Since the natural world was around for billions of years before the human race came along, and will likely continue to be around long after we're gone, our holy book hasn't been significantly altered since the time of the ancient ones. Therefore, if we're learning from nature, we're learning from this ancient source. Hence, I don't refer to myself as a Neo-Druid or a Neo-Pagan. This viewpoint helps me to keep the focus on allowing nature to be my guide, rather than relying on the sometimes dogmatic teachings of others. From this viewpoint, Druidry becomes a more experiential and individually significant path. Another misconception about modern Druidry, probably inspired by those 18th century engravings of old men in white robes, is that women can't be Druids. Even in ancient times, there were female Druids. Certainly today, in modern times, there are female Druids as well. And even though Druidry was originally a Celtic path, there are modern Druids from every race and every culture on Earth. Modern Druidry is a path that is open to people of all races, genders, and nationalities. Since Druidry is more of a life philosophy than a religion, there are people who are Christian Druids, or Buddhist Druids, or even atheist or agnostic Druids. If you've ever seen a discussion of Druids in the popular media, you probably saw pictures or video of Druids gathering at Stonehenge. The hidden implication of these depictions is that the Druids built Stonehenge. The Druids were a Celtic priesthood and class, and the problem with such an implication is that most historians and anthropologists agree that the Celts didn't arrive in Britain until around 500 BCE. Stonehenge was probably built around 1550 BCE, over 1,000 years before the Celts. Therefore, the first Druids would have arrived. On the other hand, the Celts were more of a culture and a language group than a race of people. It could be that Stonehenge was built by an earlier people, and when the Celts arrived on the British Isles, they incorporated their beliefs of those earlier people into their own spiritual practices, just as Christianity adapts Celtic Druidism to their own needs. The Druids were and are attuned to the cycles of nature, and Stonehenge is nothing if not a place to mark and celebrate the passing seasons. The association of the Druids with Stonehenge probably began during the Druid revival of the 18th century, when historians of the period had a tendency to associate anything mysterious with the Druids. This association may or may not be erroneous. Time will tell as more archaeological evidence becomes available. What is certain is that the modern pairing of the Druids and Stonehenge has now been stamped into the collective consciousness. This can be demonstrated by the fact that modern Druids celebrate the solstices at Stonehenge. Some Druid groups have even replicated this stone circle in places as diverse as Washington State, Missouri, and New Zealand. One final misconception about Druidry stems from the Judeo-Christian heritage, and that is that Druids worship Satan. There's a tendency among many interpretations of Christianity to depict any other gods and goddesses as satanic in origin. In fact, Christianity's depiction of the devil as a horned man was taken straight from the Celtic horned god Cernunnos. A horned man doesn't actually appear in the Bible. Cernunnos is seen as the physical embodiment of nature in human form in Celtic lore. He's a god associated with wildness and fertility. The early fathers of the Christian Church associated him with their devil in order to discourage pagan practices. Celtic spirituality and religion has no concept of Satan. The Druid path doesn't divide the universe up neatly in black and white, good versus evil terms. While many Druids honor Cernunnos, in Druidic practice he's not associated with evil. Instead, he's the bringer of prosperity and joy, and of course fertility. So who were the Druids, and who are they today? The earliest known reference to a people called Druidae was by the Greek author Soton of Alexandria, and that was around 200 BCE. Although Soton's original writings no longer survive, Diogenes Laertius quotes him as giving a very favorable opinion of the Druids as learned scholars. Julius Caesar also discussed the Druids at length in the Gallic Wars, written about 50 BCE. In this work, Caesar tells of the Druids practicing human sacrifice by burning victims alive in a giant wicker man. Since Caesar was attempting to conquer the Gauls at the time, many scholars questioned the accuracy of his claim. It may be true that the Gallic Wars was nothing but propaganda, at least in Caesar's account of the Druids. It is also true that many cultures throughout the world at that time, including the Romans, practiced human sacrifice. Attempting to judge cultures of the past through modern eyes is futile without a full understanding of their historical context. Whether or not it was true that the ancient Druids practiced human sacrifice is certainly not true of today's Druids. So what does the word Druid mean? Strabo claimed that the word derived from the Greek word for oak, which is drus. If this is the case, then the word Druid could have come from the Greek for oak, plus the Sanskrit word for knowledge, which is vid, transliterated into the Greek form of Uid. So the combination of these two would result in Druid, or oak knowledge. Another possibility is the Celtic word for oak tree, dware, in Irish Gaelic, a word whose root means wisdom. The oak was considered the king of the forest to the Celtic people. It's associated with strength and greatness. Therefore, Druids were the wise ones of the oak, or those who see all, or they whose wisdom is great. This association with trees in general, and with the oak in particular, is probably responsible for the popular misconception that Druids worship trees. As with most misconceptions, there's a bit of truth in it, but it's not entirely accurate. Druids don't exactly worship trees. Instead, Druids see that the energy of a creative force is present in the trees, and Druids honor and hold that life energy sacred. While Druids run the gamut in their personal expression of spirituality, from monotheistic Druids to polytheistic Druids to agnostic and/or even atheist Druids, we almost universally agree that the life force called Nuefra is sacred, so trees are just one of the many manifestations of the Nuefra. The word sacred means that which is set apart. This sacred space meditation is used to create a mental landscape that you may retreat to whenever you feel the need to calm yourself or to center yourself. This mental landscape is a place set apart from the ordinary realms of existence. It is a place that is all your own. To perform this sacred space meditation, first find a comfortable position free of distractions. Now, close your eyes. Breathe in and out in a calm manner, focusing only on your breath. As with any other meditation, begin by grounding and centering yourself. When you are grounded and centered, begin deep breathing. Feel your breath enter into your body and down into your lungs. Follow it as you inhale and exhale. Focus on nothing but the sensations of your breathing. Now think about your favorite color, or any color that makes you happy. Think of a color that has warm, peaceful associations. Now picture a glowing light in that color. The light is flowing into your fingers and toes, bringing relaxation with it into your muscles and your limbs. Follow the light as it moves past your wrists and ankles, past your knees, into your shoulders and hips, and finally into your torso, bringing peace as it goes. When you are fully relaxed, see a dot of colored light before you, the same color you saw a moment ago moving through your body. In your mind's eye, watch that light slowly expand to fill your field of vision. Allow that peaceful light to fill you and to embrace you. See yourself swimming in the light, floating in serenity. As you float in the light, zoom back a bit. The colored light you see before you is also an object. This object could be a thing, an animal, a person, or any other thing you desire. This object is something that causes you to feel happy, safe, and secure. Focus on the object and allow its peacefulness to embrace you. Now zoom out a little more. The object, person, or animal is sitting somewhere. The place it is sitting can be an indoor scene or an outdoor scene. The place should be somewhere that you feel at ease, calm, and serene. Explore this place with your senses. What do you see here? What do you smell here? What might you hear here? Are there any tastes that might be associated with this place? What physical sensations do you experience in this place? Look around you. Remember the color you saw, the object you saw, and the scene in which you find yourself. Now take a mental snapshot of your surroundings. If your mind begins to wander during this meditation, return to your mental snapshot and focus on it. Notice each detail of the scene you have pictured. Free your mind of all other thoughts and feelings. If a thought comes to mind while you're sitting here in your peaceful scene, don't worry. Just note it and let it pass on by, like a leaf floating downstream. Don't consider it a failure if thoughts come to mind. Simply note the thought, let it go, and return to focusing on the scene in which you find yourself. If 100 thoughts rise up, let those thoughts go 100 times. You are not your thoughts. You are your true self. See your thoughts as waves upon the ocean. Dive below your thoughts to find your true self beneath the waves. Pay attention only to the moment in which you find yourself. This moment, right now. Don't worry about the past. The past is gone, like water flowing downstream. Don't worry about what tomorrow might bring. There's no need to borrow trouble from the future. There is no past. There is no future. There's only this moment, here and now. completed your mental snapshot of the scene in which you find yourself, store it in your mind for future reference. This is your internal sacred place. You may return to it at any time you feel stressed out and in need of calming. You don't always have to experience the same color, or the same object, or the same place either. Choose whatever works for you at the time you need it. This visualization exercise is a preliminary for shamanic journeying, so the more you're able to practice it, the easier your experience with shamanism will be. Look around your place once more. Thank the place for appearing to you at this moment in time. Thank your God or Goddess for allowing you to come to this place. When you feel you're ready, bid your sacred space goodbye and return to the world around you. In this meditation, by opening your eyes with a spirit of gratitude and a spirit of peace, joy, and happiness.
Hi, this is Shinka Skane, Chief of the Black Mountain Druid Order. If you're enjoying Black Mountain Druidry, don't forget to subscribe and leave any comments or questions below. You can learn more about the Black Mountain Druid Order or become a member by visiting the website at blackmountaindruidorder.com. Thanks for watching, and as always, blessings of the ancestors on you and yours.